Welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes with dailystraits.com. This is your host, June Rumley. Our guest today is Auckland-based Richard Conway, who is an entrepreneur, mentor, and investor for a range of high-tech businesses. Having founded Pure SEO in 2009 as an ethical SEO specialist search agency tailored towards SMEs, it is now one of the fastest growing independent digital searches engines in New Zealand. Pure SEO started with $200, and 13 years later, it has since been named as Deloitte's Asia Pacific's fastest growing 500 tech companies. Richard has grown the company to 3 Pure SEO offices across New Zealand, Australia, and the Philippines. In 2012, wanting to connect with like-minded business owners and entrepreneurs, Richard joined the Accelerator Programme through Entrepreneurs Organization NZ. Through this organization, Richard had the opportunity to join other tech professionals for a weekend with Richard Branson on Nectar Island. In 2014, Richard sold a share of Pure SEO to Ian Malcolm and Tony Falkenstein, affording business growth. So without further ado, let's invite Richard to the show and ask him all things about his business. So hi, Richard.
Hey, hi June. Thanks for having me on. That's quite an intro.
Yeah, you did quite a bit of things
So,
in your business, business journey to date. So awesome. So let's dive right into your to the question. So what were you doing before you started Pure SEO in 2009?
so I'm British. My wife is British, and I ran a company for someone else called Search Office Space, which was an online service office brokerage. And we've been traveling a number of years, sort of 15, 20 years earlier, and we'd fallen in love with New Zealand. And we got to 30. We thought if we don't go to New Zealand, because that's where we wanted to have kids, we'll never do it. So we both walked away from our jobs. She was a social worker, and moved to New Zealand with knowing nobody in the country, and having no job. And then when it came to New Zealand, it was like, have you got Kiwi experience for all the jobs you applied? And obviously I hadn't got Kiwi experience because just arrived. So it was really hard finding a job, which was quite interesting, having come from, I ran a company for someone else reasonably successfully in the UK. So yeah, it was interesting.
Awesome. So why SEO? Like in those days, right? 2009. Sorry, I mean it was quite a long time ago. So, but why SEO? And is it because New Zealand didn't have anyone that specialized in it?
So when I realised that no one wanted to give me a job, I thought I wanted to start my own thing. I've always been quite entrepreneurial and run businesses for other people. And there are a number of different things that I looked at. One was in property management because I've got a background in commercial property. But the reason I settled on SEO was because the last company I was managing/running, we had £1 million a year Google AdWords budget. And so I got to understand the industry reasonably well. And I looked at what people were doing in New Zealand, and there were 2 companies doing well. And I looked at what both these companies were doing, and they were taking massive shortcuts. They were doing things which you never get away with in the UK. And I could tell that their methodology was not sustainable, and that their clients would lose all their rankings. And so I thought there's got to be a gap for an ethical, they call it white hat search agency in New Zealand. But it wasn't easy because I didn't know anyone, like I said, and I'm kind of an introvert. So yeah, it was quite challenging.
So do you remember who your first client was and how much was the contract for?
So I absolutely remember my first client and everything. So I'm quite, the entrepreneurial side is what I love. And when I started the business, I decided, I had no idea what to charge. So I decided $50 an hour, 4 hours a month. So that'd be $200. Get 50 clients, $120,000 a year, employ someone at 60, keep 60, rinse and repeat. So that, because it's all recurring revenue, it's all contracted. So my first client was $50 an hour, 4 hours a month. And it was a company called Creative Embroidery, who I found through someone else I met. And I think in those early days, you will go above and beyond for your customers. It's almost like you'd give them a massage on the way out, because all you want to do is prove yourself and show that they putting their faith in you will be a return. Now, obviously, we're much more an hour now, and we often need much longer. But the business model is exactly the same as it was day one. It's all recurring revenue. We're sitting at 81% of our net revenue being recurring, and that means monthly contracted revenue. And so that's how we're able to grow the business and keep growing the business. But yeah, it was interesting in the early days.
This guy, was he a word of mouth through a friend or what?
Yeah, I met this web developer who I got on with, and the web developer's client was looking for an SEO person, and they introduced me. We got on, and that was my first client. We did really well for them. We got them to #1 for embroidery Auckland, all these terms. And so, that stuff spirals, because you do well for someone and they like you, and then they tell someone else. And in the early days, your website's not going to be high on Google, because it takes time to get a website high on Google. So the beginning was hard, because like I say, I knew nobody in New Zealand, and my wife knew nobody. And so it was a case of getting out and just meeting people and talking to people and doing stuff that I was really uncomfortable doing. I came up with some tactics to try and get over my fear of talking to people.
So how are you guys surviving with savings? That you sold everything from UK, like the house and the car?
So what happened was we brought over £25,000 from the UK, and I thought I was being smart. I was taking the money backwards and forwards and making a little bit of money on the exchange rate. Unfortunately, I wasn't actually that smart, and I put the money in the UK, and the pound kept getting weaker and weaker, and so our money was stuck there. So I didn't really have any budget. I started with $200, which I used somebody to build me a single web page, and I cobbled together the rest. It looked like a child had done it. My wife was working as a social worker on around 60K a year, and she was comfortable to support us during that early time. But everything was, I had my laptop, but it was hard at the beginning, like really hard, because I didn't have any budget, didn't have any money. I just had to go and meet people and hope they'd buy me a coffee while I sell to them. But it worked out, and I think people buy from people, and if you meet and you show you're honest and you show you're going to do what you say you're going to do, you phone people back, and then things slowly start to happen. And everything in life and in business is accretive. So little steps make big things. And I follow the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen. So continual improvement, continual little steps will make big things.
Awesome. So how many jobs did you apply for before you said, okay, I'm doing SEO, pure SEO instead?
Oh, a fair few. So I could get jobs which were really sort of entry level, but I'd been a managing director of a company in England, which was quite a complex company. And I thought, come to New Zealand, I'll be able to get a job. But I was only being offered entry level, nothing that really excited me, and just would have been a stepping stone. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And there's very few stages in your life where you don't have the same risks. So we were renting an apartment in New Zealand, which wasn't massively expensive. We had no children. We didn't have a mortgage. And so there wasn't necessarily the same risks that someone 10 years older might have, or someone who's got a child. And so while it was a risk, the risk was mitigated by factors that we didn't have massive outgoings. My wife isn't particularly high maintenance. She doesn't need the latest things. And so it was, but it was tough.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about pure SEO. So after you got your first client and you started getting momentum, right? Exactly what do clients sign you up for, and what are your price? It's pretty much like, were there any competitors in the beginning?
Yeah, so there's loads of competitors, and there were quite a few in the beginning. Our differentiator was the doing it the right way, and it takes longer to do it the right way. But ultimately, if you've got sustainable business, that's the only way to do it. So what we offer nowadays is we offer search engine optimization that's getting you higher on Google. We offer Google Ads, and we'd probably be the largest independent in New Zealand for Google Ads. We offer conversion rate optimization, so split testing to help people convert on a website. We offer data analytics. We offer something called programmatic advertising, which is display adverts on third-party websites. An average spend for an SEO client might be $2,000 a month, something like that. But they would commit for 12 months because SEO takes really minimum 12 months if you're in a even reasonably competitive industry.
Awesome. What is, in layman terms, what is SEO and why should every website owner give importance to it?
Cool. Well, I'll give you an analogy I like to give. So imagine you've organized an event, you've booked the room, paid for the catering, and on the day of the event, everything looks amazing. 8 o'clock, when the guests are supposed to show up, nobody rocks up. 9 o'clock, still no one's shown up. And then it dawns on you, you've forgotten to send out the invitations. Having a website without SEO is like having an event without invitations. The SEO is the invite to the website. And if you think about it, if you put a website up and all of a sudden it was top on Google, the results would be changing all the time and it wouldn't be a good user experience. And so SEO is a slow process of getting the website higher, building authority. And it's critical now. I mean, I gave a talk at the Rotary Club. Everybody in there is in their 70s, 80s and 90s, so real old school. And I said, put your hand up if you've used Google in the last 24 hours. Every person in that room put their hand up. And that's quite a profound thing when, your 70-year-old, 80-year-olds, your 90-year-olds are even using the same technology and doing the same things. And so nowadays, search is ubiquitous with things we do every single day. It's just, everyone knows to Google.
Okay. So there are many things, facets to SEO, like you just mentioned just now. So as a starting point, right, what do companies should look into first? Especially if they don't have the budget to hire a professional company to look after all things SEO for them.
Cool. So there's lots of things. I think the first thing to point out with SEO is a lot of it is just good marketing, right? And so the first thing I would do if it was my business is I'd look at the keywords, and there's tools like Google Keyword Planner where you can find out what keywords people are searching for. Then you identify those keywords, and then what you do is there's something called metadata. There's a meta title tag which appears on the top of your browser, and in most plugins it will have a space to put that in. It should be unique for every page. It's given weight left to right, and it's arguably the most valuable real estate on your page from an SEO perspective. The next thing is Google loves content, but not just any content, because everyone's putting out content. Think about how will your content be valuable to your customers. So you're always got to be giving value, and it's about a value exchange. If someone came to you, would they get what they're looking for? Would they feel that's valuable? Then the next thing is with SEO and with Google, a link from another website pointing to yours is like a vote for your website. So for example, if you've got a yellow listing and it's got your web address on it, that's like yellow voting for you. Now, these things tell Google how popular your site is. So what I would suggest is start to make yourself an industry expert. Do interviews with other people, do podcasts, write articles for other people's websites in your industry, share information and be generous with your information on third-party sites. And then, apart from the fact that it's going to be really good for SEO, it's also going to be really good for your business because people are going to see you on more platforms and more places. And so all that stuff is really good for SEO. And don't just think of text content, because if you're not good at writing and you say, I can't write something, do a video and have the video on your website. Everybody can talk, and think about what questions people might want answered. So if you're a plumber, it might be how to fix a U-bend or something. You could do a video showing how you do it. And that gives value to people. And so the more and more of that stuff, it takes time. It's not going to be overnight. But the more you do, the more value it gives. Slowly, you'll start to see that benefit.
Awesome. So should they read your book? Because you wrote a book, right, in 2019 to give out free advice for people who can't afford the service?
Yeah, so that was commissioned by Penguin Random House. What they wanted me to do is they wanted a book for small and medium businesses. It's predominantly got case studies in Australia and New Zealand, but that was written in layman's terms. So a business owner could DIY their SEO and go bit by bit by bit by bit. And it's got all the tools and all the different elements to succeed. And the reason I did that is because not every company can afford us. And, when you are a one-man band, you've got to do things yourself. And it was really concerning that there's so many sharks in the industry. And, my own business, we do a lot of education. So we teach for the University of Auckland, for Unitech, for various other places. And so this was an extension of that. Get things out into people's hands that will help them do it. And then when they get big enough, they'll want to work with us because we've helped them get to that stage. Plus, it will stop. The ramifications of getting it wrong and doing it wrong can be huge.
Awesome. Is there an update on that book? Because SEO changes every day, right?
Yeah. So the book is How to Get to the Top of Google Search by Richard Conway, by myself. There hasn't been an update, but the fundamentals of SEO are the same as they've always been. There are little things changing, but ultimately it's about good content. It's about telling the search engines what pages are about, so keyword research, and it's about online popularity. Why should Google show this above anything else? There are changes. I mean, there was recently something called Core Web Vitals, which relates to loading speed and how things look on a page if they shift about. But they're the small things. If you do these big things and you're going in a not competitive industry, you're going to beat them anyway.
Awesome. So do news journalists, right, like who write breaking news, political news, like business news, like should they give importance on SEOs, like SEO?
Oh, they 100% should give importance on SEO. Whether they do or not, I don't know. I mean, I was actually approached by an academic from the University of Auckland on her doctoral thesis around this, and I helped her create a article blueprint for academics, how they could optimize their headings and on their research so they could be found within Google. So 100%, some journalists are really onto this stuff. Others, not so much. But the beauty of a journalist, the top tier newspapers, say the Times or Sydney Morning Herald, a lot of their content will rank by virtue of it's such a high authority site anyway. So if they do a little bit of thought about which keywords, they'll get a lot of value from that.
Awesome. So, okay, these days website owners get a lot of cold email pitches from so-called SEO companies. Most of the time, these email often end up on spam boxes, but there are one or two companies that come straight into our inboxes. So how do we check to see if the company is legit and would carry out the job as promised?
Cool. So if it looks like spam, it probably is. So anyone that's sort of spamming you is probably not legit. But the way to do it is, we talked about that meta title tag. Go to the website and have a look at what their meta title tag is. If they've got the word home in it, or if they've got their brand in the first name, or they've not got anything in there, they've got no idea what they're talking about. But invariably, if you get those cold emails, they're absolute. Yes, but anything that's automated and mass is going to cause problems, because if you think about it, Google have got all these PhDs and they're all they're working out is how to stop spam, right? And then you've got these guys spamming emails all over. Their techniques are going to be spammy if that's what they're doing. And those spammy techniques create patterns, and patterns are picked up by the algorithm. And so the ramifications could be huge of going with a company that does that sort of behavior. And in the short run, it might look great. You might sort of jump up and rank really well, but then all of a sudden you'll lose your ranking and it'll be nigh on impossible to get it back.
Awesome. So what are some of the best places where someone can learn SEO for free? First, but if it's paid, who are some of the top guys that you personally recommend?
Cool. So obviously my book is about $30, I think, and you could get it from any major bookshop online. The other people, there's a guy called Brian Dean online who's really good and runs some good courses. There's a guy called Neil Patel online who does some good stuff. Then there's websites like Search Engine Land, Search Engine Watch, Moz, So there's various websites, and they're all good, those ones. I mean, people like Brian Dean and Neil Patel have got all these guides as well, which are really good and very comprehensive. There's also our blog. If you go to pureseo.com/blog, we've got all these guides that people can just download, how to do keyword research, or all these guides which are free just to download.
Awesome. So some of the companies that I have been familiar in the past when it comes to SEO is Yoast, which is under WordPress, and SEMrush. SEMrush, I think they're based in Queensland. Are these companies considered Pure SEO's competitors?
No, so these are software platforms. So Yoast is within WordPress, and it allows you to put what I talked about, the metadata within it, and then it gives you a yellow, green, or red. It's just a piece of software, as is SEMrush. And a lot of SEO people use SEMrush, but in itself, it's just a piece of software. So there is no way to automate your SEO entirely. And the reason being is, like we talked about earlier, if anything is automated totally, it's going to create a pattern. And Google's algorithm is built to detect patterns, and it doesn't want any companies to game the system. And so if something's automated, it's never going to be the final solution. It might be automation of a certain element, and then that's fine. And you can use that within your gamut of tools. So SEMrush could be something in the toolbox, Yoast in the toolbox, there's Screaming Frog, there's all sorts of things. But they're just tools. They're not going to actually do the SEO for you.
So what do you do actually? Do you have a staff? Like if someone signs up with Pure SEO for a monthly retainer, do you get a staff to work with them on a daily basis? Or how does the service work?
Yeah, so we have an office in Auckland, we have an office in Melbourne, we have an office in Manila, we have an office in Sri Lanka. So we've got about 100 staff at Pure SEO. If a customer comes on, they sign with us, depending on what service they sign will depend on the path that they go on. But ultimately, they have an account manager, and then we have technical people as well. And so the technical people do the work, and the account manager manages the relationship. Then we use something called Google Data Studio to do reporting and show how the client is going. So we've created custom reports in Data Studio for our clients, and every month they get that. They get some information about what's going on in the world of search, and they get to meet their account manager who will talk them through what we've done, what the plan is, and find out if there's any changes from them.
Okay, that's cool. So let's talk about Necker Island. When you went there, I think in 2012, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
So, okay, he's a very maverick billionaire. He's pretty fun. And I was just wondering, are these kind of like invites a paid one, or you get like a genuine invitation from the billionaire itself?
So what happened is I'm a member of something called Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a big group of entrepreneurs around the world. And the opportunity came up through that. And then I think 1 or 2 people per country put their desire to be in. And then he or someone and his team selects who comes. And there was 25 of us from around the world. It cost me a bit of money to get there and stuff, and a little bit for the accommodation, but not what you would pay if you were going there as a tourist. But he was with us every day. We were actually there for a week, and he was with us, having lunch with us, having breakfast with us, just having a laugh with us. Just took us out to show us Mosquito Island, which is owned by one of the Google guys, and just spent time with us. Played chess, and we did this costume roulette and all these fun things. And yeah, it was interesting. But funnily enough, from a business improvement perspective, I actually learned more from the other entrepreneurs that were there. There were some amazing entrepreneurs. There was one guy who built a $2 billion SaaS company. There was a lady who was one of the dragons from Dragon's Den Island. There was all sorts of really cool entrepreneurs. And because there's only 25 of you on the island and Branson, there's no barriers, because you just sort of, for want of a better term, shooting the shit with these people. And so it's brilliant. It was an amazing experience. I think it was 5 nights. So it was about 26 hours flight and journey to get there from New Zealand for 5 nights, which was a bit of a pain, but worth it. And if I got a picture of myself with him when we played costume roulette, and I'm dressed as Mr. Stay Puft from Ghostbusters, and he's Where's Wally, and that was massive page in the New Zealand Herald when I came back, and that more than paid for the flights, in terms of PR value. So yeah, it was good.
So who did you pay the money to, the organization or to the billionaire itself? I'm just curious.
So I paid for the flights directly to the flights, and the accommodation was presumably his accommodation thing, but it was heavily discounted for us.
Awesome. So what about the valuable takeaway? You did just say that you had a valuable, you learned a lot from the entrepreneurs, but what about from him? What did you learn from him?
So he's he's an interesting individual. So you think about him, he's a multi-billionaire, and he's invited 25 entrepreneurs he doesn't really know from around the world, and he spends his time with them. And you can see in his mind, that's quite an unusual thing to do to start with, but you can see that people is his thing, and from those conversations it sparks ideas. And I think surrounding yourself with very successful and interesting people is a good way of getting new ideas and being reinvigorated and seeing things differently. And so I think that's probably part of it. And I believe personally, you surround yourself with good people, and that kind of raises your own level yourself. You are kind of the sum of the people you surround yourself with. But there was so much. I mean, there was so much of culture, and just, it was pretty amazing.
So 10 years on, right? It's been 10 years?
Yeah.
Did you keep in touch with them? Have they turned out to be lifelong friends? Some of them?
So some of the people I met, absolutely. I've been invited back to Necker a couple of times, but I haven't gone. It was kind of for me, once in a lifetime thing. There's other places, other people to meet, other cool things to do. I'd quite like to meet Elon Musk, who's an interesting individual. But yeah, I've kept in touch with quite a few of the people, and they're real good people.
Awesome. All right, that is all the time that we have for today. We have just been speaking to Richard Conway, the founder of Pure SEO. Thank you, Richard, for joining us today.
Hey, June, thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. The pleasure is all ours. To be sure to join us the next time as we aim to interview another interesting entrepreneur from across the Tasman. Thank you.